As a financial advisor, I'm frequently asked by my clients, how much can I give before I have to pay tax on a gift? So typically people are talking about money when they ask that question. So how much money can they give away to children, grandchildren, whoever it may be, before they have to pay tax? And I think it's quite a common misconception that gifts of over a certain amount will be taxed. The answer is you can give as much as you want, and there is not necessarily going to be any tax to pay. Now, it's worthwhile looking at this from the viewpoints of the three main taxes that could apply. So income tax, capital gains tax, and inheritance tax when an individual gives to another individual. So firstly, income tax. There is no income tax levied on gifts that are made. So whether you're a basic rate taxpayer or a high rate taxpayer, all of that is completely irrelevant if you're making a gift. Same for the beneficiary. It doesn't matter what level of tax the beneficiary pays when you make that gift. What is important though is that if you give money which then in itself generates an income, so for example, if the recipient puts it in the bank and then it earns interest, then it would be that income which would be liable to income tax at their marginal rate. Nextly, capital gains tax. So capital gains tax is a tax which is levied on an asset which grows in value. So if you make a gift, again, there is no specific capital gains tax which is levied because that money is gifted. However, if you have a share portfolio, for example, and you then sell it to give that cash away, you might have capital gains tax to settle on the profit that you've made while you owned it. Similarly, if you gift the asset to someone and then it appreciates in value, they are going to have capital gains tax on the uplift in value in their hands to consider as well. But on the gift itself, that is not liable to capital gains tax. And then finally, and this is probably the most complicated one, inheritance tax. So when you make a gift, if your estate is such a value that the value of your estate plus the value of the gift puts you over the threshold for inheritance tax, there might be tax to pay if you subsequently pass away within 7 years. And that's the key to remember. It's only if your estate is of a value where inheritance tax is going to be an issue. Very simply, you wouldn't necessarily need to even start thinking about this unless your estate is worth more than, say, about £300,000, and then once you're over that level, you're creeping close to the first nil rate band which is available. There are other nil rate bands available, but this isn't the time to kind of discuss all those in detail. But just think, if my estate is worth over, say, £300,000, including what I want to give away, that's maybe something that I should be considering, that there might be an inheritance tax implication on this gift if I pass away within 7 years. If you make an outright gift and then you survive 7 years, it's outside your estate and inheritance tax isn't going to be an issue. But it's if you pass away within the 7 years, that gift is essentially brought back into your estate. And if the value of your estate, including gifts made in the 7 years before death, exceeds the nil rate bands available to you, then there could be inheritance tax to pay. Inheritance tax is charged at 40%, so it is a hefty tax, but it's not really going to be an issue that affects everybody. Really, it is only the larger estates. And as I say, a good rule of thumb I would say is if you're around the 300,000 mark or above, then it's worthwhile looking at more closely. There are certain gifts you can make which are under the radar for inheritance tax. So for example, you can gift up to £3,000 per year. And if you're a couple, then you each get your own £3,000. So that gift can be made every year, and that wouldn't form part of the calculation for inheritance tax. Also, there are other certain exemptions in terms of gifts that are made out of income, gifts on marriage, lots of different quirks to the inheritance tax system. So it's certainly worthwhile in all cases making sure that you get some advice if you want to either commence a regular pattern of gifting or make a one-off gift, in particular if your estate is of a significant value where inheritance tax could be a factor. So hopefully that clears things up a little bit. In essence, an outright gift to another person doesn't necessarily have any tax associated with the gift itself. There's no gift tax. However, the asset in the hands of the recipient could then become taxable depending on what they do with the money. And also the asset that you held before you gave it away could have had a tax liability attached to it if it earned any income in your hands, or if it had appreciated in value in the time that you'd owned it. But the tricky one is inheritance tax. With all tax advice, it's really important that you get advice that is relevant to your circumstances. It's really not one size fits all, but hopefully this gives you a good starting point when it comes to making gifts and the tax implications.